Selfishness is not living as you wish. Selfishness is asking to others to live as you wish. The first is the privilege of being alive. The second is game of control. But watch what happens when we look closer. The ultimate selfishness is also the ultimate selfishness. We have been trained to flinch. The word selfish as though caring for our own well-being were some moral crime. But have you noticed you cannot experience life except from the center of your own awareness? You cannot see through my eyes, feel with my nerves. You are unavoidable, the point of view from which the universe looks out. When you understand this, you see that you have never been anything but selfish. We've been told since childhood that selfishness is a sin, a flaw, something ugly that must be stamped out of us if we are ever to be decent, moral, acceptable human beings. Yet let me ask you something simple. How can you live in this world without, at some fundamental level, living for yourself? Think about it. Every breath you take, every heartbeat, every step you make arises from the center of your own being. You cannot feel what I feel from within my skin. You cannot look out through my eyes. You cannot listen with my ears. You are stuck unavoidably as the central point of view of your own experience. That isn't arrogance, that isn't cruelty, that isn't a crime, that is simply the structure of life itself. And yet, we've been taught to fear the word selfish, as though the simple fact of caring for our own well-being were some moral betrayal. Now here's where it gets interesting. Selfishness, as it is commonly understood, is not simply living as you wish. Living as you wish is the privilege of being alive. No, selfishness is when you demand that others live as you wish. That is where the poison creeps in. That is where control disguises itself as virtue. When I insist that you live by my standards, when I force you to bow to my ideals, when I guilt you into shaping your life so it pleases me, that is selfishness at its most corrosive. The first is freedom. The second is tyranny, dressed in moral clothing. But here's the paradox, the twist that unsettles most people. The ultimate selfishness is also the ultimate selflessness. Let me show you why. Imagine the world as a vast stage, and every single person is an actor playing their role. Some people play the role of the hero. Some the villain, some the teacher, some the wanderer. Each life is a performance from a different vantage point. But who are you if not the center of your own script? Your awareness is the only place from which you can experience life. And yet, here is the catch. You cannot isolate yourself from the whole play. You are born into relationships, into a family, into a culture, into a world where every breath you take is woven with countless others. You cannot draw a line and say, here ends me, there begins the rest of the world. You breathe in oxygen given by the trees. You eat food grown by farmers you have never met. You drink water carried by rivers older than your ancestors. You are the center of experience, yes, but you are not the owner of the universe. You are a thread in a vast tapestry. So when we condemn selfishness without understanding, we miss the deeper truth. Because selfishness has two faces. One face says, I must be true to myself, even if others disagree, even if society frowns, even if people expect me to conform. That face is not a flaw, it is courage. The other face says, you must bend to my will, you must serve my desires, you must arrange your life to suit me. That is not courage, that is control, and control, disguised as morality, has been the driving force of so much suffering in human history. Wars have been fought because one group demanded another live as they wished. Families have been shattered because parents forced children to fit their rigid molds. Marriages have crumbled because one partner demanded the other surrender their freedom. The world's ugliest cruelties are born from the second kind of selfishness, the game of control. But let's pause. Let's look deeper. Have you noticed that when you accuse someone of being selfish, it usually means they aren't doing what you want them to do? Isn't that ironic? You say, you're selfish. But what you really mean is, you're not living according to my wishes, which is in itself selfish. So the accusation becomes a mirror reflecting back to the one who casts it. We accuse others of selfishness as a way of disguising our own. And so, selfishness becomes this hall of mirrors where everyone points fingers but no one dares to look into their own reflection. But what if we stopped flinching at the word? What if we admitted that every single one of us is selfish? Because how could we not be? You are inevitably the point of view from which the universe looks out. You cannot escape it. You cannot erase it. You cannot crawl into another person's consciousness and live from their perspective. You are this awareness, this heartbeat, this breath. That is not a crime, that is a miracle. And when you see this clearly, something remarkable happens. You begin to understand that your well-being and the well-being of others are not separate. If you nourish yourself, you have energy to give. If you care for your mind, you have wisdom to share. If you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. Selfishness, rightly understood, becomes the seed of generosity. Think of it this way. When you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks drop, what are you told to do? Put your mask on first before helping others. Why? Because if you pass out while trying to save someone else, neither of you survive. Caring for yourself is not betrayal. It is the foundation for caring for others. But here's where society tricks us. It whispers that you are noble only if you sacrifice yourself endlessly, only if you abandon your own needs, only if you contort yourself into shapes that please everyone but you. And what happens? You break, you become resentful, you give until you are empty, and then you rage at the world for not noticing your sacrifice. That is not kindness, that is martyrdom dressed as virtue, and martyrdom, when it festers, breeds bitterness, not love. So let us strip the disguise. Let us say it plainly. The healthiest, most radiant kind of selfishness is to live as you wish, to honor your own soul, to be fully alive. And in doing so, you give the world a gift. Because when you are truly yourself, you do not need to control anyone else. You no longer demand that others live by your rules. You free them because you are free, and freedom is contagious. Now let me ask you, how much of your life has been spent trying to live up to someone else's expectations? How often have you silenced your own voice because you feared being called selfish? How many dreams have you buried because they didn't fit the script written for you by parents, teachers, friends, or society? And how often have you, in turn, asked others to live for you, to bend, to shrink, to sacrifice, so that your comfort could remain intact? When you see this cycle clearly, it shakes you, because you realize that much of what we call morality is really just disguised control. It is the attempt to shape others into images that soothe our own fears. But life is not meant to be lived as an act of control. Life is meant to be lived as an act of expression. You are not here to bend yourself into a cage of shoulds and musts. You are here to be alive, to taste the air, to move with the pulse of existence, to feel the weight and wonder of being a conscious creature in a mysterious universe. And when you embrace that, when you live your life as your life, you suddenly see that others must do the same. And instead of trying to control them, you celebrate them. You celebrate their differences, their uniqueness, their freedom. Because their freedom is not a threat to you. It is a reflection of your own. This is the paradox. Ultimate selfishness, living authentically for yourself, is the ultimate selflessness, because in liberating yourself, you liberate others. In ceasing to control, you stop the endless game of power. In being true to your own soul, you give others permission to be true to theirs, and the world, instead of being a prison of demands, becomes a playground of freedom. So perhaps the next time someone calls you selfish, pause, smile, ask yourself, am I living in a way that honors my own soul, or am I trying to bend others to my will? If it is the first, then you are not guilty. You are alive. If it is the second, then you must release your grip. Let others breathe and rediscover the kind of selfishness that is radiant, not corrosive. You cannot escape being selfish, but you can choose which kind of selfishness defines your life. The kind that shackles others in chains of control. The kind that sets both you and them free. And so the question remains not for me to answer, but for you. Will you dare to live as yourself, without apology, without disguise, without demanding anyone else bow to your wishes? Will you embrace the truth that selfishness, rightly understood, is not a crime but a doorway into freedom? For if you do, you will find that in being true to yourself, you become the very thing this world has been starving for, an example of what it looks like when a human being is fully, unapologetically, beautifully alive. So now the choice stands in front of you. Will you go on pretending that selfishness is some terrible curse, shrinking yourself to please the world, suffocating your soul just so others may applaud? Or will you dare to reclaim the word, to see it not as a vice but as the beginning of true freedom? Do not waste another day living someone else's life, carrying someone else's expectations, dancing to someone else's music. Life is too fragile, too fleeting, too precious for that. Be bold enough to live as you wish, not as you are told. Be courageous enough to stop demanding others fit your mold and instead let them breathe in their own wild rhythm. Do not ask them to shrink for you. Do not ask them to dim their fire so that your comfort is undisturbed. Release them and release yourself, because here is the truth. You cannot be anything other than the center of your own awareness, and if you do not honor that center, your life will pass like a shadow, unlived, unclaimed, forgotten even by you. But if you step into it fully, if you live as yourself without apology, then you will not only free your own spirit, you will light a spark in everyone around you. And the world is desperate for such sparks, so live it yourself, live as if this very moment were the only one you were ever given. Stop flinching at the word selfish, and instead transform it into a force of authenticity, a force of courage, a force of liberation. The call is simple, the challenge is great. Choose today to stop asking others to live as you wish, and begin at last to live as you are.